Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It's a day of dramatic developments, and I'm not being facetious in talking about what's happening at the Narendra Modi Cricket Stadium in Ahmedabad. That's dramatic, but that's not what's moving us right now. It's also not something that might be happening at the line of actual control with China or in Indian politics. It is something happening where we thought news had frozen for quite some time. That is the line of control in Kashmir between India and Pakistan. As we know, today quite dramatically both India and Pakistan issued a joint statement saying that they were going to cease fire, that they were going to abide by all old agreements between the two sides. Essentially that means going back to the 2003 truce that Atal Bihari Vajpayee and General Musharraf had settled on after nearly 2 years of tension in the course of Op Parakram, when both countries came close to war many times following the terrorist attack on India's parliament. So 2003, for several years after that, that ceasefire had held. And then it broke every now and then. In 2008, it also looked like Dr. Manmohan Singh and Pakistan government were reaching some kind of a broad understanding, which obviously Manmohan Singh's government did not have the mandate to carry through, but he would have tried to then sell it to others in the Indian political system. But just as we were going through that tense process, just then the terror attacks in India picked up, and then we know what happened, Musharraf's decline, etc., etc., and that peaked with the Bombay attacks of 26/11, and that process was over. Since then, that process has been restored a few times, but breached more often. For last few years, I would say since 2015, late 2015, that process has broken and has become worse over these years. 2019, particularly after the status of Kashmir was changed, Article 370 was made non-applicable, and the state was split into two union territories. These incidents increased even more, and now it was like a free-for-all. Anytime TV channels are bored with other news, they could show you visuals of burning villages or rockets or short-range anti-tank missiles flying, not to kill any tanks on either side, but basically to make nuisance or attack each other's bunkers, or if not bunkers, each other's villagers. So it looks like today both sides announced that they were going to put an end to it. Now this is a big deal. It's a big deal because last year was the worst in this history of ceasefire violations. Last year, Snehesh Alex Philip, our defense editor, tells us, please see his story, I'm sharing it with you. We had 5,133 ceasefire violations in just 1 year, 2020. And in that year, 46 people were killed, mostly soldiers, on the Indian side. That's a lot. In fact, if you may have noticed, in the first 2 months of this year, in fact, the first 2 months are not over, it's still a couple of days in a short month of February, about 300 violations had taken place, which is less in average terms compared to what it was last couple of years, and also there's been only one fatality. So you can see that there's been a certain kind of thawing or certain kind of cooling of tensions in that area, and certainly you haven't seen these big exchanges of artillery fire, fire assaults as they are called. So there is a change. Just for comparisons, so we understand how things have been deteriorating. In 2018, there were only 1,629, that is 1629 or thereabouts, ceasefire violations depending on Indians accounting or Pakistanis accounting. In 2019, this had doubled to about 3,200 violations, and then as you can see in 2020, it had further increased by 50%. So it had more than tripled compared to 2018, which also wasn't a nice year. So the two countries have now decided to calm things down. Now when we tell a news story, when we go to a journalism school, we are taught about 5 W's. What are the essential elements of a story, news story? 5 W's and 1 H. What, where, who, why, when, and H is how. To that now, in modern journalism, because most of you, everybody knows the basic news. So as I speak with you, all of you know that this both sides have agreed to cease fire and to honor the 2003 agreement. So now what do we look at? We look at how, yes, why, very important still, and what next, because what, where, who, when, you know. So why, how, what next? That's where cut the clutter comes in, and that's what I'm trying to explain to you. So what, where, who, when, you know that the DGMOs, Directors General of Military Operations of the two sides talked. They issued this joint statement. You can see this short joint statement. When you have a joint statement, then you know that there is agreement. Otherwise, between India, Pakistan, India, China, you have different statements and then you start searching for nuances, जिसको कहते हैं बाल की खाल निकालना या hair splitting, to see if there is any difference or if anybody is qualifying anything. So this is a joint statement, you know that. You also know that they have said that they have decided or agreed to address each other's concerns. I will explain to you what that means in a little bit. Third, you can also be sure that this has not happened dramatically. So that is where we come to the question of how. It's now quite evident that the two sides have been talking for at least the past 3 months at the NSA level. So India's NSA, we know who it is, that is Ajit Doval. On the Pakistani side, they don't have an NSA designated as such, but there is this gentleman called Moeed Yusuf, who's Special Assistant on National Security Division and Strategic Policy Planning to Imran Khan. He could also be some kind of a bridge between Imran Khan and the GHQ, that is General Headquarters, because you know the power in Pakistan resides in the GHQ. That is the Vatican of political power in Pakistan. I say it in a completely secular sense because Vatican also holds political power. So political power sits there, particularly when it comes to foreign policy, India, Kashmir, China, US, etc., etc. So Moeed Yusuf would have the blessings of both. He could be the ambassador of the GHQ in the Prime Minister's office or the Prime Minister's ambassador to the GHQ. Then you can figure out which one of the two is more powerful. So these two have been talking, and I see a story in the Hindustan Times. You will see it in your papers tomorrow, or you can see it on the net by Shishir Gupta, that suggests that the two have also had at least one meeting in a third country overseas at some point during these negotiations. So that is the question, that answers the question of how did this come about. When did we get the first indication, or when could we have got the first indication that something interesting was in the offing? So please play the coverage, or if you get the real video, of our Army Chief General M.M. Narawane speaking at Vivekanand Foundation just yesterday, that is on Wednesday this week. So among the many things he said was, there is a very interesting mention. He said the army has to be prepared not just for a two-front war, but a 2.5-front war, that is Pakistan, China, and the internal security situation. So far so good. Every serving officer has to say that my army is prepared to fight a 2.5-front war or challenge. That he said, but he also said more than once that unsettled borders are in nobody's interest. That unsettled borders mean tensions on the border. That if you want peace on the border, then you have to settle the borders, but until you can settle the borders, you have to find arrangements to keep the peace on the border. So those were wide indications that something was being worked upon, and also that was the government's larger thought process at strategic levels. That is the Prime Minister, NSA, Defense Minister, Home Minister, and External Affairs Minister, the think tanks around the government, say for example the China Study Group. So these were, this was a very good indication. That came just after a couple of very conciliatory statements by the Pakistani Army Chief, that is General Narawane's Pakistani counterpart, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, who said, and this is the exact quote I repeat to you, Pakistan and India must resolve the long-standing issue of Jammu and Kashmir in dignified and peaceful manner. And then he goes on to say that both countries need peace, both countries have to find a solution to their long-standing problems. That was quite unlike the belligerence we had heard from him after August 5, 2019. But a year and a half has also passed since August 5, 2019. Much has changed in the world, especially the India-Chinese tension and now a relative thaw there, and also the big change in America. We'll come to some of those issues towards our conclusion. Another very interesting takeaway from General Naravane's talk at Vivekanand Foundation, when asked if during the standoff in eastern Ladakh, he has seen or the Indian forces have seen collusive action by Pakistan and China, he said a categorical no. There was no qualification, there was no diplomatic subterfuge or euphemisms. He said no. He said we have also not seen any exaggerated deployments or shift in deployment patterns from the Pakistani side. So both frontiers, whatever happens, keeps on happening. So that was quite a clean chit to Pakistan. Also, it was reassuring. That reassurance also reflected the mindset on the Indian side strategically, that it is not necessary to have a two-front threat all the time because it doesn't work for anybody. So these were the indications. Now we get into the question of why did the two sides do it? Now you can see, and we get into some guesswork there, but educated guesswork, and we are not so naive also as to say one lost and the other won. Remember, India, Pakistan, China, three countries have very strong armed forces and a lot of nuclear weapons. It is impossible, and I know that today I might get away saying it with less abuse. Normally, I would be expected to say that India can defeat both Pakistan and China decisively inside of 72 hours, but no, that is not going to happen. Between India, Pakistan and China, no country can achieve any objective, any political or strategic objective through military action, through combat or through a war. All three know it. So all three at various points of time use some coercive diplomacies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. When it works, everybody withdraws. When it doesn't work, do you then look for an escape route? And I will explain that also in about a minute. So look at the picture from the Pakistani side. They saw India-China thaw come about. So maybe if that situation had continued to be bad, or if that situation had worsened, then Pakistanis would have seen less of an incentive now to, as they would see it, let India off the hook or give India relief on their frontiers. They would then want to keep India fully engaged on their frontiers. But the thaw or relative thaw, or the beginning of thaw between India and China, particularly along Pangong Lake, would have caused an immediate provocation on the Chinese side to look at life afresh. That you are now no longer guaranteed a counter pressure from the Chinese, so it's time also to make a fresh beginning. That is one, and I'm now looking at the Pakistani side first. The second thing is, Pakistan has a big economic mess. Pakistan is today in an economic disaster, and they've been there for the past several years. They have to keep going again and again to IMF. The conditions the IMF puts makes it very onerous for their government and their people, because prices go up. All kinds of things happen when you borrow money from anybody. Anybody you borrow money from puts in conditions, and IMF puts tough conditions. So if a country has to go to IMF more than dozen times in the couple of decades that I've been covering Pakistan, that tells you that you are in deep trouble and you have to find your way out of it. So it's possible that Pakistan now sees that it should leverage its geography, because it's located between Central Asia, Afghanistan, India, China and the Arabian Sea, and Iran. So it can leverage that geography. For China to leverage that geography economically, it can leverage that geography geostrategically by being a nuisance state, which it has been all these decades. But if it wants to leverage it economically, then it has to calm its relations with India, because we talk about India having a two-front situation all the time. But remember, a much smaller and a much weaker Pakistan also has a two-front situation, not very different from ours. So we have a much stronger adversary, China, at the one end, and Pakistan on the other. Similarly, the Pakistanis have a much stronger India at one end. If anything, the disparity between India and Pakistan is much greater than the disparity between India and China. And then they have a completely unsettled Afghanistan at the other end, and their own border region, which is very unstable, where loyalties are very mixed up. Loyalties get mixed up between tribes, nationalism, all kinds of things. And there is also an unsettled border there, because Afghanistan has never accepted the Durand line between the two countries. So Pakistan also has a two-front situation, and also Pakistan would also like its situation in Balochistan to settle down a bit, because that has become quite a challenge for Pakistan now. So maybe Pakistanis are searching for some respite, peace in the long run. I don't know. I hope so. But for now, yes, you can see that they have plenty of reason to calm things down. The other thing is the change in America. The change in America affects both Pakistan and India. It affects China also, because as long as Trump was there, while Trump said all the nice things about India, basically Trump had caused the greatest strategic disruption in the history of the world since the Second World War. It was worse than the Cold War, because nobody could trust him. His adversaries could not trust him. His allies could not trust him, which was worse. So the world was very, very much in a flux. Now that he is gone, Biden says America is back. What that means is that America is back to being America, not as a policeman of the world, but you now see a consistency in American policies, and you know that this will not change with every press conference where the president of the day would get provoked and say something. So you see what's happening in Saudi Arabia now. America is putting Mohammed bin Salman in his place. You see how Turkey is changing its conduct. The Chinese have responded to that. I would like to believe that the thaw even between India and China is a little bit inspired by what's happening in Washington. And others are also getting comfort. America's allies, which include India now, the Quad allies, are also drawing comfort from a stabler, calmer White House. So that is the reason for both sides, because this administration will have lesser patience with anybody who tries to use military methods or quasi-military methods like exported terrorism to achieve its political objectives. That is a motivation for both. What is the other motivation on the Indian side? So first of all, let me tell you this, that we are three countries, India, Pakistan, China, which keep coming close to war. India and China not so much, India and Pakistan very often. Yet we, touch wood, and I hope I'm not proven wrong on this, they never go to war. They come very close to it. In 2002, Op Parakram, Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Brijesh Mishra had both said, in fact, Mr. Brijesh Mishra had said so in an interview on Walk the Talk. He said that we had never intended to go to war, and I said, but you had piled up all these forces. A war could have broken any time with some local provocation. So he said, look, that was a risk we knew, but that risk had to be taken, because for coercive diplomacy to work, the threat had to be so real that even we would start believing it. Now, that is the way all three countries, India, Pakistan, China, at various points of time, have run their diplomacy. They've used military to achieve other objectives without fighting a war. So for decades now, they haven't fought a war. Even when India and Pakistan fought one, both kept it very limited only to the Kargil theatre, because you knew that nobody was so insane as to want to expand it into a full-fledged conflict. The Chinese and the Indian side have now displayed this in eastern Ladakh as well. You see Galwan, you see how post Galwan, both sides, India and China, managed the situation. If you see all these videos coming out of China now, these are propaganda videos. You can see them from one side or that. And you can see, depending on which side you are on, you can say who did better and who caused the provocation. That is our choice. No argument with that, because no argument can work. But it's quite evident that this looks like a situation, a brawl that developed locally. Like two neighbors fight, they have an argument, one hits the other one brings his family along, this one brings family, security guard, somebody, then some neighbors who are friendly with this one come from his side, and so it became a street side brawl kind of situation, which unfortunately led to a lot of loss of life on both sides. But both sides did realize that this had gone out of control and they did not want a repeat of this again. That's why in the Pangong area there were several incidents of firing, but all that firing was in the air. No violent blow was exchanged after that. In fact, the Indian soldiers, 10 of them that the Chinese had captured in the Galwan brawl, were returned peacefully and without any publicity or propaganda within the next 24 hours or 36 hours maybe. Similarly, Chinese soldiers, at least two that we know of, who were captured by the Indian side at various points, they were also returned without any publicity, pictures, nothing. So it showed that big countries do not want to fight a war, and that is what now I think has come out true. And I would like to read this in the Pakistani conduct as well. So now we come to our final W that we added, what next? So I'm not an astrologer, nor do I believe in astrology. Nor do I believe astrologers can change anything. But you can see the situation as it is, you know the facts, you know the history, you know the equations. So if I may do a little bit of, even at the risk of self-congratulation, if I may refer you to the last national interest, I will share it with you today, both in text and on video. In the last national interest, I said that India is hopelessly triangulated in this three country situation. That means a two front situation, Pakistan on the one side, China on the other, India at the other end of the triangle. So India has to break out of this strategic triangle. I had also said that India can only do it by making peace with one of the two sides. And if you read that piece, you will see that my view is that it's always less difficult, I won't say easier, it is less difficult to make peace with the side that is weaker than you, because then you have the leverage and you can be generous or seen to be generous. So it's India's choice whether India wants to make peace with China first or Pakistan first. Generals will keep saying we can fight a two-front war, but no country can fight and win a two-front war. To talk of fighting a two-front war is, or winning a two-front war is fantastic nonsense. Nobody wins a two-front war. So I would like to believe, and that's where opinion comes in. When I say what next, I will put some opinion and some wishful thinking there. I would say that I hope it's the beginning of a new process of India strategically de-triangulating itself from China and Pakistan. And once again, if you look at the equations, you might make more progress with Pakistan than with China faster. But there is a downside that is political for Narendra Modi, Amit Shah and their BJP, that somehow over the years a permanent hostility with Pakistan has become a very important factor for them in domestic politics. So the question I raised in that column was, will they show the ability or sagacity or large-heartedness to sacrifice their immediate political interest for the larger strategic benefit of their country, of our country, which is India.